Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar for PAA Presents Perspectives on Global Leadership. My name is Nancy Merritt, the Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations at the University of Pittsburgh. The PAA Presents series brings together alumni, faculty, and staff from around the world who are leaders and change makers, and whose stories can inspire us all. We bring together these speakers from across all disciplines to engage in a discussion on topics that bring value to our community and open up the world to Pitt. We have two dynamic alumni here today to share their career journey, expertise, and insights on becoming a leader. First, please let me welcome Her Excellency Dr. Hanan alAhmadi, the Assistant Speaker of the Shura Council in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In 1995, she received her PhD from Pitt's Graduate School of Public Health and started her career. She was among the first women to be elected to the Shura Council in 2013, and later became the first woman to chair one of its sessions. In 2020, Dr. alAhmadi made history as the first woman to serve as Assistant Speaker of the Shura Council in Saudi Arabia. Thank you for joining us today. Next, I would like to welcome Ambassador Masegoa Masire Muwamba, the ambassador from Botswana to Germany. In 1990, she earned her MBA from the Joseph M. Katz School of Business and now serves on the Chancellor's Global Advisory Council at Pitt. She has over 30 years of national and international senior level experience in the fields of business and diplomacy. Prior to her appointment as Botswana's ambassador to Germany, she served 2 terms as Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth, where she was responsible for building relationships with world leaders and pushing for progress in human rights, legal issues, and youth development. We are very excited that you can be part of this panel. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Ann Cudd, the University of Pittsburgh's Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor. Appointed in September 2018, she has primary responsibility for all aspects of the University of Pittsburgh's academic mission. Provost Cudd previously served as Boston University's Dean of the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and at the University of Kansas, where she earned the title of University Distinguished Professor of Philosophy and was the Vice Provost and Dean of Undergraduate Studies, an inaugural role for that university. Provost Cudd is an accomplished teacher and scholar whose research explores themes of oppression, economic inequality, capitalism, and gender. Her philosophical interests, the focus of more than 50 books, articles, and chapters published under her name, span social and political philosophy, philosophy of economics, decision theory, and feminist theory. She holds a doctorate in philosophy and 2 master's degrees, a Master of Art in Philosophy and a Master of Arts in Economics, all earned from the University of Pittsburgh. Thank you for joining us today, Provost Cudd, and I'd like to now turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for that introduction. And I want to welcome our guests today who are just incredible alumna of our institution. We're so proud and delighted to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our discussion and learning more about your journeys to global leadership. So let me just start with a question for Professor alAhmadi, if I may call you Hanan. Please tell us about your journey to the University of Pittsburgh and how your time at the school prepared you to start your career.
Thank you, Provost Cudd. It's a great honor. It is my pleasure to join you today, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very pleased to join, to talk again to the community of Pitt, University of Pittsburgh, and to join my colleague, Ambassador Masegoa, in this webinar. So very happy to be here. I joined Pitt in 1991. I was a student on full scholarship from my country. I was an employee of the Institute of Public Administration, and I had my master's, my MHA, Master's in Health Administration from Tulane University. And then I had this full scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh. I was very excited. I was the first woman in my institute to have this kind of scholarship. So I really appreciated the opportunity. And I was very eager to join the university and to very enthusiastic to learn and to join all the classes. I came to Pittsburgh with my family, my husband and two little children at the time, who are now grown men, of course. We stayed in Pittsburgh from 91 until 95. I really enjoyed university life. I had great professors. I felt empowered. I was very eager, as I said, and a highly spirited student that I wanted to learn everything. So I did not have enough from my classes. I joined classes at the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health, and also I took extra classes at Cates Business School, GSB, the Graduate School for Public and International Affairs. So, and I took many classes, even arts classes. When I came back to my country, I had great memories, fond memories, and great friendships at Pitt and in Pittsburgh. I really enjoyed my journey, and I have learned a lot. It reflected on my personal and professional development. So when I went back to the Institute of Public Administration, I was a faculty member there for a long time, and I was assigned to leadership positions and leading many projects there, and I was involved even in civil society organizations and many aspects of life in my country. So I was eager to give back. And as you said, as they mentioned in the beginning, in 2013, there was a historical decision to involve women, to include women as members in the Shura Council. The Shura Council is equivalent to a parliament in our political system in Saudi Arabia. It's a member of the International Parliamentary Union. It has 150 members. At the time, it was only men. So they allowed women to be members. There was an amendment to the legislation of the Shura Council, and 30 women entered, and I was one of them. So we were very eager. The 30 women were very eager and very active in the Shura, and we started recommending legislative reforms and changes in so many areas of life. I was appointed for a second term in 2016, and this is my third term, but this time I was not a member. I am the assistant speaker, and it was a historical decision. The reason why, I think it's a reflection of the transformation that is taking place in Saudi Arabia. At this current time, we have a huge transformation plan in Saudi Arabia that was launched in 2016 that reflected in all aspects of life, and women empowerment is a cornerstone to it. So appointment of a woman to assistant speaker of the Legislative Council is a huge step. That was welcomed by all members of society. It was really appreciated by women, and I really appreciate it. And I hope I can fulfill my role in this position. Now it's been a year and a half, and my life at Pittsburgh definitely had an impact on my career throughout. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanan. Sounds like you really took full advantage of your time in Pittsburgh, but then you've had a really path-breaking career. So let me turn to you, Ambassador Masiri Mwamba, or Masegoa, if I may. I'm sure that your story is just as interesting, and we would love to hear about your journey and your early career.
Thank you so much for having invited me to participate in this forum. It's an absolute pleasure for me to meet the professor and to also learn. One of the things about participating in these fora is that it's not just us sharing to our participants, but it's also us also learning and supporting each other in our respective paths. So I thank you very much. My path to Pittsburgh has not really finished, because I feel that I'm still on the path with Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh. But it started in a very slightly different manner. My undergraduate was in physics and electronics. And therefore, I came to Botswana. I came back from the United Kingdom to come to Botswana to really offer service to my country in terms of the development agenda. In the physics space, I was working more with renewables and looking at particularly at the domestic level, because in the rural areas, we had women who were traveling long distances to collect firewood. We had challenges of degradation of the forests, and we therefore were looking for solutions that could be applicable at a domestic level, such as building solar water heaters that were functional, and looking at how we could have improved stoves that were made out of and used less firewood in that respect. So that was the one end of my career. The other was very technical in terms of the electronics in the electronics that is used in telecommunications. And I straddled these two paths for a while and ultimately landed on the telecommunications platform, which I personally felt was very important, not just as an end in itself, but as a crucial tool in our development agenda. And therefore, it was important for me to reach out to an institution such as University of Pittsburgh, the Katz Business School, especially because the pace of the program that we enrolled in was aligned with the pace of the changes that we were experiencing in the telecommunications industry. So I couldn't I would have loved to have a leisurely walk through my MBA, but that was not the case. And so that's how I ended up in Pittsburgh. So the whole journey was really about technology for development and how leadership and how we can leverage technology. And in my experience in Pittsburgh, our buzzword for the year was synergy. We were looking for synergy in everything, and it was just a buzzword that was popping up in every context. And I still feel, that's why I feel my journey hasn't finished, because it's still there. And it's important for us to continue to look at synergies and continue to see how what we do impacts the world around us, and how what we do is interdependent and related with what other people and other issues that are taking call. In terms of my personal experience at Pittsburgh, it was interesting. It was difficult. I was coming, first of all, from a British-based education system where the pace and the way that the modules were spread out was different from the United States. So first of all, I had that adjustment to make. And secondly, I was coming from a very technical and moving into the softer skills of marketing and public relations and human resources. And therefore so it was like a mindset shift, which said, you can't just focus and zero in on the technology. You have to be able to see how it's applied and how it is used to produce solutions and to govern and lead in that respect.
Thank you very much. You're mentioning synergy. I remember when that first became a buzzword, but it really is all about multiplying our efforts and collaborating together. And I just want to say again how grateful I am that you both are here to really create some synergy for our alums and for our students, who many of whom are watching today. So that's really great. So you've both had leadership experiences in international environments. I wonder if you could define what a global leader is, acknowledging the interconnected world we live in, and what is the skill set that you believe is needed to navigate complex leadership roles that encompass global issues? So this time, Masegoa, I would like to start with you.
Thank you, Anne. And I like the word you use, navigate, because my belief is that really global leadership is about navigation. We are navigating a diversity of issues on options. We are diversifying. We are navigating different points of intersections of interconnectivity and interdependence. And therefore, what all this means is that we are indeed in a very complex world and in a complex environment where we need the tools and the skills that can support and facilitate us as we embark on this navigation journey. One of the things that I would like to stress is the importance of values. We see now more than ever before the extent to which leadership is being challenged in terms of the personal values that they bring to the table and how they can develop their own compass their own guiding principles, simply because we know we don't have templates that we can use. There's no template that says global leadership and you plug that in and away you go. So more often than not, you are coming into a situation where the situation is dynamic, is changing all the time. The high level of interdependence and the interconnectivity is also creating challenges. And what it says to me, and one of the key skills as global leaders, is the fact that you cannot do it alone. And if you cannot do it alone, it means that skills such as communication, skills such as being able to persuade, to influence, become very, very important as leadership skills that you need to get the solutions on the table. But also creativity in the way that we look at the solutions, creativity that we in our thinking, and creativity in our engagement, because we now have a situation where stakeholders are, there's a multiplicity of stakeholders, there's a multiplicity of issues and challenges that we have to confront, and we need each other to support and to build on that. Let me leave that. I might come back after the professor has a point to make, some points to make, if there's anything else, but let me pause for now.
Great, yes. Let's turn to the professor, to Hanan, please.
Hanan.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Masegoa. If I may start also with navigation. As I was navigating the world at a very early age, doing my master's and then doing my PhD, I realized I'm coming from a village in Saudi Arabia for the first time to the United States and joining graduate school. I realized that no matter how different we are, and regardless of the geographic boundaries and the cultural and religious boundaries and the value frameworks and the political systems and everything, there is a lot of commonalities between us. And in humanity, we are all alike. We have the same hopes, the same aspirations, the same fears, the same worries, the same needs as nations and as communities around the world. So I realized that it's very important to start with what brings us together rather than focusing on what drives us apart. And I think that's an important sensitivity for a global leader, because a global leader in the current world today is someone who has to deal with people from different nationalities and has to cross all kinds of boundaries and has to influence them towards a common goal. So it's very important to be culturally sensitive and culturally intelligent and focus on the shared values between different communities rather than focusing on the different points. And we have to respect the different value system and the different cultures of the world. And we should consider our differences to be valuable assets. And we should appreciate our uniqueness instead of focusing on the differences that draw us apart. In the world today, facing the pandemic, maybe it's the best example. The whole world was in the same trap. We all had similar experiences, regardless, rich or poor country, the same fears, the same hopes. So it's very important, as the ambassador has mentioned, to be flexible and to have an open mind and to respect the different cultures. And at the same time, as a leader, you need to have very deep self-awareness. You have to know your own values, your own principles, your own culture, and where you stand and your own priorities, and then how you are perceived by the others, because that's the only way, as a leader, you have to influence. That's the only way you can assess your impact and your ability to lead. And you have to be you have to be flexible to modify your leadership style, because what works for you, for example, in Pittsburgh, as a leader to motivate workers, maybe it doesn't work in a village in Nasir in the southern part of Saudi Arabia. So as a leader, and now, for example, in my country, we have great examples. We have mega projects that were launched with the Vision 2030 that employ many people from all around the world and are led also by experts from all over the world. These people have this challenge, how they can influence and how can they be successful with a community that has different cultures and very diverse. This diversity should be considered an asset and we should capitalize on it. I think for me, one of the best things that I achieved from traveling and learning abroad is having an open mind and learning how much we have in common. It's very exciting to explore the world and to learn the different cultures. So if I have an advice to the students today, it's that keep an open mind and appreciate people who are different than you. It's very exciting, and you will be surprised how much you learn from people who are completely different. Thank you.
That's really a wonderful message, to keep your mind open to diversity and to gain from it as we can. You know, at this stage in the pandemic, many people are really on edge and finding difference more easily than commonality. But I think your message is really powerful. So Masegoa, I wonder if you want to make any further remarks about this or about what Hanan has said.
No, I totally agree with Hanan. And I think the issue about shared values is very important, because again, by interacting and engaging outside of our own spaces, outside of our own cultures, we recognize that we are all, there's a common humanity. And I think the example that was provided for the COVID was precisely that, to say it was a really a clarion call to all of us to say we are all in this together, and we all need each other to be able to pull through. So I think that sense of being open-minded, that sense of togetherness, in that there's a commonality in working together and supporting each other in the solutions that we are trying to engage in.
Yeah, you know, and we are all women leaders, and we have that in common. But that is also a different perspective that many of us have brought to otherwise male-dominated situations. And I wonder if you found that through your leadership, that you're able to find commonality with people perhaps more easily coming from a woman's perspective. I don't know if either one of you want to try to respond to that. Hanan, if you would like.
Yes, thank you, Anne. That's very nice, very good point, actually. Yes, women leaders have unique challenges. They come to an organizational space that is traditionally has been managed and led by men, and it's a male-dominated system. You have to deal with that. However, you have to keep an open mind. You can't just think of victimizing yourself and thinking of a woman as a minority and keep that gender blind. For me, I try to be gender blinded, to be successful and being able to navigate all my projects throughout my professional career. But I am conscious that women leaders have specific challenges. However, you have to keep in mind also that we were encouraged and we were empowered by many men in our lives. My professors at Pitt, my colleagues, even when we joined the Shura Council. So there are champions on both sides, men and women, and we have to focus on those people. So the unique challenges that women face are slowly being overcome. For example, in my country, so many changes that have taken place. I remember, this is a story that I had maybe about 15 years ago. I was traveling with my son and we were going to Italy. And at the passport check, the man asked for my permission from my husband. And for me, that was an automatic thing. It's just a paper that was there on the passport. So I showed him. And my son was astonished. Mama, you are my mother. How can you are a PhD, you are this, and you are a leader. How can you? And all that system that we took for granted for a long time is completely dissolved now, with huge participation of women everywhere. There are laws empowering women all over the kingdom. And all the things that we faced in the beginning are slowly being removed, or the challenges, and it's because of women leaders as well as men leaders. So men and women work together, because women empowerment, it's not for women, it's for society, it's for the world. And that's what I need to focus on all the time. It's not for us, it's for our children and for the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a beautiful message. Okay, well, maybe we'll pass on to the next question. In most careers, a mentor or a philosophy drives a leader's goals and mission. Can you tell us a story about either a role model or a philosophy that shaped you and drives you in your public service? Masegoa, I think I'll start with you on this one.
Thank you, Anne. I think if I can just add a point or two on the women's issue. I maybe if I can start with that.
Yes.
I would say that in addition to what Hanan has said, coming into the workplace through engineering was actually very, very interesting, because we had a situation where we had a problem that needed to be solved. So in the first instance, I didn't really find that there was too much of a challenge between the genders. But where I picked it up and I realized that it was very, very, very important was when I moved into economic development, and sometimes policies are put in place, and policies say, for example, we say we have a policy that's going to help export development as an example. But if we don't take into account that the women who are producing for export purposes are doing so under conditions that do not enable them. I mean, the example, for example, if you need to have bank clearance and you need to go through the husband or the male spouse, and you're not able to do that in yourself. So it limits what you can do as a business that is women-led. So it was very interesting looking at it in that broad spectrum of the one where, especially for a developing country like Botswana, it was so important that we needed an all hands on deck approach. We started off from a base. Botswana was one of the poorest countries in the world, and today it has risen to be one of the success stories in terms of its economic development. But in order for that to happen, we did need the women to be part of the solution, and therefore a lot of the development programs that we have had have worked towards that. This year, on Women's Day, we had the theme was on bias and how we can break the bias, both conscious and unconscious. And that was the only point that I really wanted to highlight, that I feel that it's such an important theme that needs to go beyond Women's Day, because it is both conscious and unconscious. And the challenge may be the unconscious one, where as women, we may be excluded or not find that the opportunities are not as refined as if we didn't have that stereotyping. But I totally agree with everything that Hanan said, that it is important that as women, we also don't play the victim. We also find an opportunity to navigate. There's our keyword for today. To navigate the system in terms of how we might be able to reach out and extend and help our men folk also understand and appreciate where the barriers are and how they can help. Sometimes it's a question of help us help you. And sometimes it's a question of what can we do to help ourselves in some situations. In terms of the question you were asking about the philosophy, I really think for me, two key principles that I look at in terms of my leadership are engagement and support. And by engagement, what I mean is that we need to bring on board different points of view. We need to reach out. It's very easy to ask a question and people to say to you, no, it's okay, you do whatever. But it's also because they don't feel that they've been heard. They don't feel that they're listened to. And I think that the soft skills that are inherent in us and for us as human beings, we have basic needs that soft skills can help us address. And I think sometimes that's where we trip. we spend so much focus and time on the hard skills, and we don't pay enough attention to the soft skills. So for me, that's where my engagement comes in. The second is support. It's acknowledging from the get-go that we are not all at the same level. That may be in terms of appreciating, in terms of having a particular point of view, and not being at the same level doesn't mean that one is wrong and one is right. It might just mean that we need to reach across the boundaries. We need to reach across and support each other so that we do get to the point where we feel heard. We do get to the point where our solution and creativity is unleashed. Because when we do get to that point, then we are comfortable enough and we feel the support and we feel we can make a contribution in this setting.
Great, thank you. And let me turn to you now, Hanan, to ask you about Mandarin philosophy as well.
This question made me reflect a lot on people who impacted on my life and who influenced me and my role models. And I'm a person who is open to learning all the time from so many people. So I learn from my colleagues, my superiors, even my children. Sometimes I ask them for advice. And but if I think of a woman, and that's what I wanted to focus on today, of a woman who influenced me or who inspired me, I would say it's my grandmother. My grandmother was born in a different Saudi Arabia before oil. And before, she was very poor. She was an orphan. She was alone. But she was a very proud woman. She worked, she was independent, she worked, she sold the products she made in the local market, and she never asked anyone for support. From her, I learned a lot about independence and being a strong woman and being a proud woman. At the same time, my grandmother, she had 13 children. And some of them died. She struggled in her life. She faced so many difficulties. I think we can learn a lot as leaders. We should consider such women who went through a lot in their life, and they went through their life with their heads up and with a lot of wisdom and a sense of responsibility and pride and a value set that is very strong and a strong conviction. So that's the impact of my grandmother. And my mother is similar to her. See, in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, mothers and grandmothers are very strong personalities. And until today, my mother can be very tough on me, and she has a great influence on me. At the same time, my father, from a very early age, he's a role model in a different capacity. My father taught me the value of the joy of learning and exploring about different cultures. From a very early age, he brought me books and novels from all over the globe, from Russia, from France, from everywhere. I read a lot of international novels as a young girl, and I think that impacted a lot on my life. He's a scholar of literature. And also, at the same time, from my father and from my grandmother, I learned the importance of never losing sight of who you are and where you came from. If you want to advance, if you want to move on, you have to be just a better version of yourself and not a copy of somebody else or another culture. So I came to the United States. I really enjoyed my experience and journey here, but I really have great value of my heritage and my culture. So from my father also taught me a lot about humility and generosity and the value of giving. So I think if I have a philosophy, or if the people around me, I asked actually my staff, what do you think are the most important values that I always talk about or mirror to you? They said working very hard, being responsible, especially the responsibility of a mother. This is something you cannot delegate. Motherhood is something you cannot delegate. You can delegate everything else, cooking, washing the dishes, but motherhood is something you cannot delegate. Also, enjoying the journey. Our careers, although they are a way of us to support ourselves and make a living, but at the same time, it's much better if you enjoy what you're doing. And the other thing I learned from both of them is being humble and being proud, and never forget where you come from and who you are. So it's very important to value your own culture and tradition at the same time, respect everybody else's culture and tradition. That's it for me.
Thank you. Yeah, you make me laugh when you say motherhood is the one thing you can't delegate. That is so true. And I think that all of us are probably very busy, global leaders in our own right. And yet when children call, that's really, it comes to us and we drop everything, don't we? So Masegoa, I wanted to follow up just a little bit. You talked really very eloquently about your philosophy, but I wondered if you had a role model that you wanted to, or a mentor who stands out, who you wanted to tell a story about.
Yes, I think for very similar reasons, I also would highlight my grandmother and my mother. My grandmother lost her sight very late in life. I think she had what probably today would be a curable disease, but at that time the medical facilities were not there. So she lost her sight very early on. But it was just amazing because throughout that period, her personal dignity, her sense of being, she maintained that. She was very particular about how things were done. And it used to amaze me the level of trust that she endeared amongst the community. So I would say to her, how do you know if somebody says to you, save this for me, how do you know how much it is? But the level of trust and the level of regard, the high regard in which they had her. And my mother was very, very hardworking, and she was she espoused cheerleading skills. She thought I could do anything, and therefore she was a great support to myself and to the family. And like Hanan was saying, she also there were 6 of us children, but anytime there would be like 13 to 15 plus children around the household, and somehow she still managed to do that. And so I think both of them, but I think we mustn't overlook, and I can't speak about role models without including my father, because I think that the fact that we have the male champion in our life, we have that force in our life that says, your opinion matters. My father always pushed me for an opinion. I'm a technical person. If you ask me a question, I answer in 2 seconds and I'm done. So it was very important, and he had to keep plowing and say, okay, let's find out a little bit more. And I said, but I thought I already told you. But the fact that you knew that your opinion mattered, it forced you to A, form an opinion, and B, to know the value of making a contribution and your contribution on the table. So that was very powerful for me.
That is very powerful. Thank you. Thank you both. So let me move on to maybe a little bit more difficult question. As with any roles, and at times in all of our careers, I think, we experience failure of reaching a goal or creating a program where we were very passionate about. I wonder if you could speak about a time you failed and how you came back from that failure. Are there obstacles or challenges that you've had to overcome to ensure that you're creating something that will have lasting impact? So Hanan, if I could start with you.
Yes. I think failure is always there around the corner, no matter who you are and what you're doing. It's just part of working hard. If you work, there is a good chance that you will fail one day. So it's just part of life experience. So to me, I look at failure as a way of learning. You learn from your mistakes, you learn from the challenges you face. Any challenge you face makes you stronger. I wanted to say this story to the students because, and I always say it when I talk to students, that when I was in university, I failed the first year, and I had an F the first year in one of my courses, and the last year in my study. When I was about to graduate, I could not graduate because I had an F in one of the courses. I was not necessarily a bad student, but these things happen. I did not work very hard. There were certain circumstances. Anyways, I had an F, which reflected on my GPA at the end. and made it very difficult for me to join graduate school. And when I was accepted for my master's, I was accepted as a conditional student, and I had to prove myself, and I had to take extra courses. So that was a big challenge, and it's a very bad experience for me, but I learned a lot from it. Since then, when I did my master's, I graduated with an A average. Also, when I did my PhD, I was keen on learning from my mistakes. So it's okay to have to fail and not to do well, but it's very important that you learn from these experiences, because they make you stronger, and you learn new lessons, and you are able to face new experiences again. Sometimes I faced a big challenge that I thought, okay, I lost confidence in myself and I don't want to try anymore. But I think, I was not giving up at all at any time. Always facing your fear, always meeting the challenge, and you will find that working hard will really help you passing the challenge. And if you fail, for me, the best thing is I did my best. I comfort myself by saying I did my best, and there's nothing I regret.
Thank you very much for that. Masegoa, I wonder if I could ask you to reflect a little bit on what you've learned from failure, assuming you've had some failures in your life.
I have had spectacular. One of the things that I did is when I finished my work at the Commonwealth, because I was the Deputy Secretary General, I put my name forward for the Secretary General position. And I felt I thought I covered all the bases. I put in a lot of work. I did my best in every which way I could. And at the end of the day, I found that I narrowly missed the position, but the point was that I didn't get it, and that equals a fail if we want to define what a fail looks like. So a couple of things that I learned on that journey. The first is that because I had worked so hard and I had given it my all, accepting that I had failed was actually very easy. It was easier for me than it was for the people around me, because the people around me did not appreciate to what extent what I had put in there. So I did not have any regrets in terms of the journey that I had embarked upon. And I also felt validated that it got so close. So for me, that was fine. However, accepting a failure is one thing, because it is not an event, it's a process. So there was the process of having to reflect, and that's one of the great things that it does. It gives you, it provides that opportunity to go back on what did doing your best look like. Is there anything that you could have done differently? Is there anything that you could have improved upon? And indeed, that is what I found. So, and the important thing is not to stay in that space, because then it can drown you if you are just forever going back over, I should have, could have, and so on. But the important thing was you use every failure as an opportunity to reflect and to look for those lessons that you pick up as a result of that. And if you can do that, you can build on it and move forward. The second part of it was that it was then, the reason I said it's a process and not a journey is that it's not so much that we will fail. What is important is that we will be challenged to get up after the failure. So for me, the failure itself is, oh, okay, that didn't work out. Wow, on to the next challenge. No, the main challenge is how do we then move and bounce back and move on to the next challenge. Your confidence takes a knock. If you feel you have worked very hard, you have put everything into it, and it still doesn't get you the results that you either thought you deserved or thought was within reach, then the confidence takes a big knock. And part of the reason that we have these negative associations with failure is that we all celebrate success so much that we don't want to taint it with any sense of reality. But failure means that there is doubt, there is uncertainty, in terms of the outcome, and therefore it can shake you. So one of the key lessons was how to build back my confidence and get the courage to get up and go. And the listeners and the students on this call, that's for me is one of the the very important things, that you cannot sit there and wallow in your sorrow, if as it were, but you do need to somewhere find the courage to go out and try again. And sometimes it's to try the very same thing that you missed out on the first time. And sometimes it's to try a different route, which has its own challenges, but it's the principle of getting up and bouncing back after failure over and over, because it doesn't just happen and goes in the box, but it happens over and over in sometimes it's small little things, but sometimes it can be significant things, and therefore it can affect you differently, and so on.
Thank you. That really was a spectacular near miss that you had. So these are some great lessons, I think, for our students, because many of us, especially when we're young, we really fear failure. And we have to realize that everyone, even spectacular leaders like yourselves who've been so successful in your lives, you do experience failure, but then what you do is you learn from it and you rebuild your confidence and you have the courage to try again. So I think they're great lessons for our students. Thank you very much. So I can't thank you all enough for sharing really these deep dives into your backgrounds and the frameworks that guide both of your leadership styles and perspective. Now I want to ask, how do you see generational differences and leadership hierarchies impacting societies around the world? And how much do you think that being a woman posed unique challenges in addition to these especially if you could reflect on how you see these generational differences playing out today? So Masegoa, I guess I'll turn to you first on these complex questions. What's your perspective?
The first thing that I notice is it's almost like the mindset, the environment in which we operate at the moment, and the very real call for flexibility in the workplace right now in the post-COVID era. We are looking at, flexibility of workspaces. And so for me as a global leader, it's really challenging the whole premise of leadership, in that we are saying it's no longer, this is how it's going to work. And that template, that elusive template that I referred to earlier is definitely not on the cards. We find that, for example, in a lot of industry, is bring your own devices because of the interconnectivity. It doesn't make sense for me to use an Apple computer if I can use a different one that speaks, my Samsung speaks to something else, and so on and so forth. And so we find, so there's flexibility in the workplace. So the standards, and then how then do we maintain the integrity of the organization, the integrity of the workplace, if everybody is essentially doing their own thing in their own way at their own time? So I think that for me is one of the key generational challenges, which is brought upon by technology and other developments that we are living in. The second one is data in terms of information, misinformation, and how do we help the generational leaders in terms of right now, even when you're engaging with a young person, sometimes they are listening to you and they're not listening to you, because in their mind, they can just go to Google and figure it out. And then once they've figured it out on Google, only to find that it's taking the organization 10 steps back, because that's not what you meant. And had they listened in the first instance, we wouldn't be there. But I think that is a real challenge, in that there's also a lot of misinformation, and therefore people have access to so much data. And data is not information, and sometimes distilling that to get the information that will help them move to the next level is extremely difficult. And the third point is the virtual reality. We are now operating in an environment where I'm sitting here in Botswana, in Gaborone, you are in the USA, Hanan, I am assuming, is in Saudi Arabia, and we have to operate as a team. And if we do operate as a team and we all have a common objective that we are trying to realize, if this was the workplace that we had signed up for, how do we then build those skills? Because we no longer can sit at the table together. But still, even as we zoom over, we still need to build in interpersonal skills. And the generational challenge that we have is also speaking, it comes back to the soft skills, but it's also the interpersonal skills of how do we build that alongside the, I've got the answer, I got it on internet, I've got it on here, I don't need to talk to you, I'll Google it, don't worry me, I'll find the answer. So I think for me, that data, lack of information, misinformation, wading through the large volumes of education to get to the large volumes of information to get to the answers that we're looking for, limits and restricts us in one way. On the surface, it gives us more freedom, but in reality, sometimes that freedom, it masks the fact that it doesn't really give us the freedom because we don't have what it takes to then navigate that as we move forward.
Yeah, I think those are very interesting observations, and it's interesting that you went straight to the workplace challenges of the different generations, and the fact that young people use social media at such a wide scale, beyond what we do. And I also very much appreciate your thoughts about maintaining the integrity of the workplace. I've even thought that as many young people want to work remotely, completely remotely, right? They can live in a different part of the world and still be, working for, and then what does that mean to be work for the University of Pittsburgh when we are of Pittsburgh in some sense, and yet they're, spread around. So I do think these are challenges that we in our generation are going to have to help to work with the next generation to figure out how that's going to work well. Because I think we're not there yet. But Hanan, I'm interested in your thoughts as well about generational change.
In Saudi Arabia today, we are a classic example of this question. We have this change in the generational differences, and it's impacting the leadership hierarchies in a way that is really a classic case. Right now in Saudi Arabia, 70% of society, of the population, is less than 30 years of age. The workforce, 50% of people who are working now are at the same, in their 20s and in their 30s. Our cabinet, since I explained to you the launch of Vision 2030, that was liberating in many perspectives, in many aspects. It's transformed us from the traditional way of doing things in economy, in society, cultural, in all aspects of life. This vision also empowered women and empowered youth. In our cabinet now, there are maybe 5, 6, several members of cabinet ministers who are in their 30s. And they are having, very serious portfolios leading the country. The Crown Prince himself is in his 30s, and he is the champion of this Vision 2030 that empowered women, brought so many rights to women, created a huge reform, legislative reform. We are reinventing the legal and legislative structure in Saudi Arabia by youth power. The young people are bringing in energy and vitality that is amazing. And it's for us, we think they are innovative, they are change agents, they are creating a future that is better because they challenge the status quo. They challenge the way we've done things for so long. we really needed this change. And as I said before, we need a change that resembles us. We don't need to change our values and traditions and religion. We can search for moderate interpretation of our religion and of values, and then move on and integrate with the rest of the world. And I think that's a product also from the education system. Saudi Arabia had a huge scholarship program for a long time, but in the past year, this program was accelerated. And for example, today we have about 40,000 Saudi students in the US, only in the US, but also we have thousands more in other countries of the world, in Australia, in Japan, in Korea, in Great Britain, everywhere. And I think that brought us a young generation that is highly educated, innovative, eager to make change. And for us, this was really positive because it's accelerated also the change in Saudi Arabia to a status that we really were looking for and we were eager to change. And now also as a woman, I'm really appreciative of these changes. And for the young generation of women, they have more opportunities than they did before, opportunities in leadership, in employment, in entrepreneurship, in all fields of life. So I think it is really positive, the generational differences and the smart way of integrating the youth with the older, with the gray hair generation. It's also very important. We need some wisdom in leadership. So it's very important to have this mix of youth and older wisdom in order to have a positive change and move forward towards your vision in society. So I really appreciate this young generation and the changes they brought us, the innovation, the creativity, the change that is taking place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask you both a question that can help especially our future female leaders. What issues do you see that those coming after you can focus on to ensure success while they navigate challenges that you faced and are still impacting the growth of female leaders? And this time I'll start with you, Hanan. What are your thoughts?
Today, the current time is much better for women leaders than it was in my time or earlier on, maybe 10 years ago. I'm talking about my part of the world. There are more legislation that support women empowerment. There is more international agreements and treaties that also encourage countries for equal opportunity and greater participation of women and protection of women's rights. Today, women are more educated. So it is a very exciting time for women leaders. There is a great opportunity. I think now a woman has the glass ceiling is much higher than it was before. It's still there. And we should be conscious of the fact that many international companies and the big companies in the world, the majority of the leaders there are men. The business world is not women friendly yet. And even parliaments all around the world, Western and Eastern and all countries developed and underdeveloped, 20% the presence of women in parliaments today. So we achieved a lot, but there is still a lot more to be achieved. Also, women represent the weakest link in societies in face of disease, in face of poverty, unemployment. They are hit the hardest than other segments of society. So they are the weakest link. So what I think these are the challenges, but the opportunities are there. So we need to focus on the opportunities. And again, I'm not the kind of person who would like to dwell on the things that women lack and the rights they don't have. I like women to go forward and to work hard and to learn and to try to achieve the best they can achieve. It's very important to have mentors, to seek guidance, not only from women, also from men, because we as women, there is a big tendency for us to be lonely at the top. So if you are isolated at the top position, you are not leading, you are losing as a leader. So it's very important to build your network and your support network. And also it's very important to remember, and this is something I really try to remind myself of, success is not about me, it's about the team. We achieve success together. So I don't try I think it's very important not to focus on personal success and personal achievement. It's the goal of the organization or the project. The other thing is, I think women really need to be empowering to other women. It's important to praise other women, because there is a great opportunity. It's enough for all of us. The competition is healthy to a certain extent, but it's not healthy if that's what you focus on all the time. So be supportive, be friendly, be encouraging, praise your colleagues, men and women, and build your support network. Also, I think it's very important to have personal skills, having humility and generosity. And as a leader, you have to have integrity. You have to be believed by the others, and they have to really appreciate your being there. You are also coaching and learning your team. So a big responsibility that is on our shoulder as women is to build the next generation of leaders, men and women. For me, I don't hesitate at all to designate time to meet with students, with young leaders, men and women, and I really enjoy and I learn from them. So it's important to also put some time to build other women. The last thing I want to say is, as a leader, you must be an agent for change and take risk and speak out. If you have strong conviction, you have nothing to be worried about. If what you want is is it within the public good and it's the right thing, it's your obligation to say it and be strong and say it. So taking risk and being an agent of change is the job of a leader. So, and there are a lot of other things, but I think that's what I remember from my own experience. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great advice. Masegoa, would you weigh in on these issues?
Yes, indeed. I think that women are definitely agents of change. And one of the things that I did during the COVID era, I mean, during the height of the pandemic, is I started a mentoring platform to keep in touch with mainly young women from Botswana. And what I found, some of the recurring themes were just coping skills. There's so many choices that need to be made. There's so many options that are available. And what they were struggling with was, how do I know that I've got it right? That inner confidence that they need. And if we look at women as mothers, as family and homemakers, you find that they don't question their confidence in those settings. They take charge. They do what needs to be done. That's where the empowerment and the agent of change comes from. But however, when you are in a situation where you are now dealing in the workplace, sometimes there's a degree of intimidation that women confront that makes them second guess. And I think it is that second guessing of women, of ourselves as women, that sometimes leads to to the challenges that we face. That even when you've got it right, you still have something saying, I may not be good enough. I may not have it together. And that's where mentoring becomes so powerful, because mentoring is there to support, to engage, to reassure, and to help you appreciate that, yes, you have to make options and take options and make chances that work for you. One of the mantras that I have is, you cannot have it all the time. So prioritize, look at what's important to me right now. If I'm a startup, I had the situation where, for example, when I was in London with my children, they were very young, and I would go out for receptions as is required in diplomatic work. But I made a compromise. I would stay, I would not stay very long, and I would not sit and mingle and career enhance in a manner that I would have if I didn't have young children. I thought I would strike a balance in that way. I will do what I need to do to get my job done. That was important to do as well. But I will also try to balance. When I was in the plane that is now flying over, Sorry. But when my children were a lot younger, I was working in telecommunications. So for example, I just said no working lunch. And the thing I say to the women is, when you are very clear about your boundaries, when you set boundaries and you communicate them, it's amazing the extent to which they get respected, and people actually help you. They will say, "Oh, Masegoa, it's 12:30. We know you're not going to be able to join us for lunch. Maybe you can peel off right now, because from here we're going to go and work through lunch." And as the kids got older, then that can. So I think sometimes as young women, it's very important as we get young women entering the workforce, to know that you want to retain and hold on to your womanhood. It's what makes you who you are. But you also want to acknowledge and recognize, if I'm in the childbearing phase of my life, then is it really the time for me to be doing X, Y, Z that is pulling me in a different direction? Or do I say, "Oh, I'll let this guy go ahead, and I know that there's a way that I can look at it"? One of the things that I picked up when I was at Pitt was actually the mommy track. That term also was gaining currency in that period, where some women would say, "It's not the right time for me to be up for the promotion. I would rather take a lesser job because I'm still I'm still spending time with my children." And so I think these are options that, as young women who are listening in, be alive to what's important to you and how you can prioritize and see that you excel in one area of your life and leverage that to support you in another area, rather than try to score high points in all areas and feel frustrated and inadequate and undermine the successes the success that you already represent by just being at the table when the conversation is being had.
Thanks. I think that's great advice. I think it's also great advice for men to, when they are parents of young children, to also take the opportunity to really enjoy that part of their life and to make sure that they're there for their children as well. I also think that the workplace has to acknowledge that people are parents as well, and make room for that in certain ways. And I think the presence of women in the workplace and in careers like those that you've both enjoyed really helps society to see that really that's a priority for all of us and for our societies as well, to raise strong and confident and very happy children. So as we approach the end of our time together, let me ask what Pitt students can do while they're earning their degrees to build skills needed to be part of the global workforce. And Masegoa, you bring perspective from your service in several countries during your career. What are your thoughts in particular about how they can be part of this global workforce most effectively?
I think one of the things that we really picked up from the COVID is the interconnectedness and interdependence, but it also showed us that localizing solutions is very, very important in terms of local economies and local communities. We found that if we don't pay attention, because we are in this big global agenda, if we are driven by cost saving and the cheapest way to produce a product, it's not necessarily the most effective, because we found that when the world closed down, it was that last mile that was important. We found that in terms of solutions that were being, and even where the areas of need were, they were better identified by the communities, because they knew where the people in the communities who needed the assistance, who needed the help were. And therefore, and so for me, one of the key things that we of today is learn to look at. We are part of the global system. We have a value chain that helps us to contribute to the bigger and broader solutions. But let each of us recognize that we need those local communities, and we need to build and develop them as we go forward. And then I think the second thing is the planet in which we are. We have a responsibility. It's the whole notion of whatever we do in the present, what impact. And I think Hanan did raise the issue of awareness earlier on. It is so important for young people to develop a healthy curiosity about the world in which we live, to be able to say, how can we best protect the environment? How can we best promote best practice that will nurture and ensure that this planet Earth that we are all in is going to be there for the future? And back to your point, Anne, of making sure what is best for our families. It's what we do in the workplace, it's what we do as mothers and fathers, but it's also what we do in terms of safeguarding their inheritance, if I can call it that. And finally, innovation. We started this whole conversation this afternoon on what on some of the issues that impact us as global leaders. And the reality is, at the end of when it's all said and done, is that we need to innovate to get better solutions. The plane is coming again, so let me sign off now. Let me mute now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Masegoa. That was wonderful. So Hanan, as a groundbreaking leader and someone focused on empowering others, what concluding thoughts would you like to share with all our students and alumni with us today?
Thank you, Anne. I think I'm reflecting on what Masegoa had just said about being responsible to our planet. And the young people actually of this generation are very conscious. I think they are learning a lot about, they know a lot about protecting the nature and protecting our planet. In Saudi Arabia, we just launched a green initiative. It was launched by the young people in the cabinet, as I mentioned to you. And this green initiative was also supported and encouraged in the Gulf region. You know, the Gulf region, all the countries here are oil producing countries. So being responsible for the planet and supporting this initiative is really important, because it impacts on so many economical issues, and also it will impact on our environment. So I think the young people, I want to echo what Masegoa has just said, of it's important to be responsible for our planet and also our community. I think people today, the fast pace of life makes us sometimes forget what's important in life. I want to enforce I want to talk about the importance of values and the importance of being supportive to each other. There is too much selfishness in the world. So I think the young people today, because of their fast moving towards their future and going to school and building their career, sometimes they lose the importance of community and reaching out to each other. Even with a smile, you can impact the life of someone on the street. So it's important to give. It's important to maintain your humanity. But again, overall, as a student, I think you are lucky. You still have your life ahead of you. You still have a lot of time. So I really advise you to capitalize and try to utilize the resources at Pitt, because the faculty, as I remember, were very empowering and eager. So engage with useful and productive discussions with your classmates, with your professors, and not just focus on your grades and the courses you are taking. Expand your horizons, take other courses, not in your specialty. The world today requires leaders who have a broad horizon. The other thing is about the generation gap. Please respect the elders and appreciate the wisdom that the elders, your grandmother, your mother, even though there is a big generation gap, and we tend to be slower and maybe not as educated in terms of technology, but we have a lot to offer. So I think it's very important to appreciate the people with more experience and reach out and listen to the stories of your grandparents and your parents. You will learn a lot. But all in all, this is a very smart generation, and they are achieving much more than what we achieved. So I'm hopeful that they are doing great, and they will be responsible for the rest of us and the planet. So I wish them all the best.
Thank you very much, Hanan and Masegoa. This has been really a wonderful experience for me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience as global leaders. And now I'm going to hand it back to Nancy for concluding thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this was such a wonderful discussion, and I'm so sorry to have to bring this conversation to a close, but thank you, Dr. alAhmadi and Ambassador Masire Mwamba, for sharing your incredible insights and experiences. Thank you, Provost Cud, for moderating today's session. I personally learned a lot today, and I'm sure all of our attendees did as well. Before we conclude, I wanted to encourage our attendees to remain engaged with Pitt and with the Pitt Alumni Association. And of particular note, in just 2 days, so this Thursday, March 24th, we'll be hosting our second annual Women in Leadership Conference. The Pitt Alumni Association is honored to be partnering with our Muslim Alumni Network and the Alumni Network to conduct this hybrid conference. So if you're able to join us in person at the Community Engagement Center in Homewood, we'd be delighted to see you. If you can't attend in person, we are also very happy to see you via Zoom. For more information and to register, you can go to alumni.pitt.edu and just click on upcoming events. In closing, I want to once again thank our wonderful panelists for offering their time and expertise, and thanks to our attendees for tuning in. I hope to see many of you at a future event. And in the meantime, I hope you take care and stay well. And of course, hail to Pitt. Thank you.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hail to Pitt. Thank you. Thank you for having us.